The B is for bigot. Hey y'all, it's your boy Ernest Bigot here, ready to discuss recent accusations of Islamophobia made against me. Maybe they made them against you, I don't know. Remember here, I'm just asking questions. Now, with recent New Year's Day ISIS-inspired attack on America in the great city of New Orleans, should we be fearful of Islamists? Now, is there something wrong with questioning whether or not I want mass numbers of people of the Islamic faith to be imported to America? And if so, why? Especially considering Islam has in its tenets to be a conquering religion, and there's tremendous friction wherever it battles against other ideas. Take the simple island of Bali in Indonesia. It's the only Hindu island there. The rare times there's violence at any scale is imported from the neighboring island of Java, Muslims. In Thailand, the problem areas are near the Malaysian border, with Muslim separatists creating the havoc. Virtue signaling Europeans decided to import en masse the religion of peace. How's that turning out for them? That car that decided to swerve into the German Christmas market this year? In an act of peacemaking, I imagine. It's not a one-off, unfortunately. For more than 2 decades, hundreds of thousands of young British girls have been gang raped by members principally of one ethnic group. They were targeted by the grooming gangs, which of course is a euphemism for what they actually are, which are rape gangs. But they were targeted in part because they were non-Muslims and they were not worthy of whatever protection Islam offers to its adherents.
Because people need to hear it from survivors that these are racially and religiously aggravated crimes. That when I was being beaten, I was being called a white slag, a white whore, a white cunt. That over and over again, the references to my whiteness was always at the forefront of my perpetrator's mind. And that was always linked in with religion and his idea of what a good Muslim was and a bad non-Muslim was. In the minds of these grooming gangs, if you're not covered down to your ankles, down to your wrists, if the hem of your top doesn't cover to your knees, then you're asking to be raped. Or, if you're not washing in the way that you should wash as a Muslim, if you're eating pork, you're unclean, you're dirty. If you use a knife and fork, you're dirty. If you don't eat your food with your hands, sounds like I couldn't never quite understand that. It's the opposite way around. But so there's lots of narratives within these grooming gangs which make hatred of white people a justification for what they're doing.
Those who have raised alarms about the grooming gangs, aka Tommy Robinson, or those who posted about it in social media, have been arrested and prosecuted for stirring up racial unrest. But the weak-willed, suicidal, empathetic Brits will arrest Christian women for silently, I repeat, silently praying in front of an abortion clinic.
What are you here for today?
Physically, I'm just standing here.
Okay. Why here of all places? I know you don't live nearby.
But this is an abortion centre.
Okay, that's why you're stood. Is you standing here part of the protest?
No, I'm not protesting.
Are you praying?
I might be praying in my head out loud.
So I'll ask you once more, will you voluntarily come with us now to the police station for me to ask you some questions about today and other days where there are allegations that you've broken public spaces particularly?
If I've got a choice, then no.
Okay, well then you're under arrest, okay, on suspicion.
But as a Muslim, the police will offer their protective services as you fill the streets and stop traffic for prayers of a political nature. Meanwhile, there are in fact Sharia courts in areas of Britain. Well done, old chap. The country of Sweden now has much more crimes and grenades going off all over the place that never ever used to be. they've got no-go zones. And if you have the audacity to discuss the religion of peace, watch out. I was in Sweden long ago, and my host outside of Stockholm, because I couldn't afford a place in that expensive city, was from Lebanon. I tried to bring up the topic of Islam, and he threatened to cut my throat. I stayed awake all night with one eye open. Is this what you really want to import to your country, where you dare not even question or have a conversation with them about the slightest bit of their beliefs? I know they say not to talk religion and politics, but you really don't talk religion and politics to these here people. When I was in Syria, right before everything blew up in the year of 2010, I believe the month was October, I was in an area called Palmyra. It's kind of an oasis city out in the middle of the desert there. And there's a guy who wanted to take us out into the desert on an expedition and charge us some money. I was talking to him, and I asked him, Haji, his nickname was Haji because he had made the pilgrimage to Mecca. And I said, Haji, what about that Danish cartoonist who drew the picture of Muhammad? And given the fact that I believed he would want to get our business, I thought he would come up with some politically correct thing to say. Instead, the flash look of anger, his eyebrows going down and together across his face, and he said, Ernest, I'll tell you, if I would ever meet this man, I would kill him. Whoa, Haji, take it easy there. I mean, what say, and I'm just hypothetically proposing something here. What if I were to draw a stick figure, and I made it with my fingers in the air, and I labeled underneath it Muhammad? And he looked me dead in my eye and said, Honest, I know you. You would never do such a thing. It's telling, isn't it? Do you really want to continue to have these conversations with such people? Islam is a religion of conquest and subjugation. Ideology that holds women as second-class citizens, owned by men, where honor killings, if you dare to bring shame to your family in whatever way they might interpret, are allowed and are even taking place in the United States of America amongst the Muslim population. Speaking of which, about 10 years ago, I dated a Somali girl for a few months. That is, until her family discovered and forbade her from ever seeing me again. I think that she's still alive, fingers crossed. And in places like Afghanistan, women are forbidden education. Women are often beaten or have acid drops in their tongues for speaking too much or too loudly. I mean, as many times as I've told my woman to pop on down, even for me that seems a little extreme. Now, to be fair, on the other hand, Saudi Arabia's former ban on female drivers did leave their roads substantially safer. So you got to give them credit for that. And of course, hundreds of millions of Muslims, in fact, I would say the vast majority, are decent, good people just trying to get on by. The virulent strain of Islam, however, holds sway over a percentage of its adherents to the religion that is simply too high. That makes it treacherous to bring over its adherents in mass numbers. Meanwhile, here in the United States of America, woke, parasitized morons are trying to replicate what is happening on the streets of London, where more than half of British Muslims openly tell their Western hosts, 52% according to several polls, they think that homosexuality should not be legal. Nevertheless, Queers for Palestine adamantly march and advocate on behalf of Hamas. Apparently, they're unaware that the only impediment to the usual gravity-based conversion therapy implemented by the group is the fact that most of the tall buildings in Gaza have been decimated by Israeli airstrikes, depriving Hamas of their usual drop points. Like we've learned from everywhere that Islam spreads, it brings trouble. And too many of the immigrants from Middle Eastern countries have zero desire to take on the cultural values of their generous hosts and instead wish/demand that we convert to their values. I lived in the Czech Republic for some time. Years ago, I returned to Prague and climbed to the top of Pechin Hill overlooking the city on a warm summer day and came face to face amongst the flowers with a beekeeper in a full black burqa. That was the first time that ever happened. It was quite scary. And now you have to consider such an encounter. It can be construed in two different ways. Number one, evidence that they don't wish to ingrain themselves into Western norms, which I consider to be likely, or maybe they chose this traditional dress to avoid being harassed by the patrols consisting of young Muslim men going around countless European cities enforcing Sharia-style clothing, often assaulting Europeans who they deem aren't dressed in a compliant manner as well. Sorry, but I openly state that we must limit the immigration from Islamic countries to people who truly want to be here, that are going to make our nation better, who believe in Western values. It's not my duty to take to my house people who request a free dinner while demanding my wife wear a beekeeper costume while they redecorate my castle to comply with their taste. It is societally suicidal to take so many people in from these countries because of the minority who will behave in such a militant, conform to always infidel manner. A serious vetting process is needed. Yes, CARE, the Council of Islamic Relations of the United States, will call me an Islamophobic. That generally implies an irrational fear of something. But let's say I'm reticent to jump into a river with crocodiles swimming around. Does that make me crocphobic? I'm sure that some of the crocs are decent, well-meaning vegan reptiles, but those that intend on taking me down to the bottom of the river kind of ruin it for the rest of them. I mean, isn't it simply in their DNA? Similarly, is it not in the DNA of Islam to be anti-Semitic? Let me give you an example, a quote from the Quran itself. The last hour would not come unless the Muslims will fight against the Jews, and the Muslims would kill them until the Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree, and a stone or tree would say, "Oh Muslim, oh servant of Allah, there's a Jew behind me, come and kill him." I mean, I ain't gonna claim the other holy books don't contain passages of hate, but people of those religions choose to ignore them. If you believe that the Quran is the final word of God, you don't have the option just to brush it aside. So we know what they mean when they say, "From the river to the sea, get out of my way, you friendly tree." Call me an Islamophobe again. The real question is whether, in fact, there is anything to be afraid of. Well, let's see here. You got 9/11, the Ballot bombings, the London Underground, the Madrid train bombings, the recent Christmas market, the death from apostasy, death for gays, 9-year-old girls being forced to marry 40-year-olds. And all you have to have is have someone mention your name in the same breath of the word blasphemy, and in many Muslim countries, you'll be descended upon by a mob that will disembowel you. But to be fair about the Wahhabism game, let's take a look. Christian, Jews, Buddhists, all take the same measures if you criticize their religion, right? I mean, am I right? As long as the religion is used as a lever, as a tool to recruit evildoers, committing heinous acts of violence as took place in New Orleans, as long as immigrants take our kindness and slap us in the face with it, refusing to integrate while taking government welfare and demanding we change our culture to comply with theirs, I say no thank you. Please stay where your values are prevalent. I don't wish you ill. In fact, I hope you and your country prospers. But unless you undergo a serious vetting process and want to take the values of your host, please remain in your place of origin. That's the reality that I see and the actions I feel that we must take to protect our bodies, our citizens, and our culture. Oil and water do not mix, nor do Western values and fundamentalist Islam. But I suppose I'm a bigot for questioning this and pointing it out, right?